This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Youth Leaders, today I'm honored to have John Conafay on the show. He is a U.S. Air Force veteran, which thank you for your service, John. He's also the CEO and co-founder of Integrate, which is a company that builds program management software for some of the coolest space companies out there. Anyway, with that being said, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
So I'm a bit of a space geek. So how is it that you got involved and interested and moved over towards the space industry?
Yeah, so was not a space dude my entire life. Actually, Egyptology and then music took over my life when I was about Egyptology up until 14, and then music took over my life and was all-consuming until about 21. Definitely got the aerospace bug, particularly when I was in the Air Force. Joined the Air Force to get a swift kick in the butt I had a little bit of discipline to go to school. Went to Arizona State University after and studying economics, and met this lady on a plane that we immediately hit it off and became great friends. And she'd sold a few companies before. And I remember the stewardess came back and asked if we could calm down. We'd just met. It was like an hour and a half flight because just expletives were rolling. And she was like, "You're not going into banking. You're obviously, I've known you for 20 minutes and you're way too passionate to do that," and everything. And so she was like, "Go find something that you're absolutely passionate about and really, really gets you going, and everything else follows, I promise." And she became a mentor for a long time. And eventually went and looking for clubs at ASU because I was a little bit lost as to exactly what I wanted to do, and met this dude who was the president of Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, which is now a 40-year-old organization started by Peter Diamandis and Todd B. Hawley and a bunch of other people in the early 80s. And they had high-power rocketry videos and high-altitude balloon footage and a lunar rover competition thing right there. And I was like, "Holy crap, this is entirely too cool." Went to their first meeting, and he turned off all the lights in the auditorium and played "When We Stop Dreaming" by Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I was just hooked from there. Became the treasurer and then the president, and then ran the national conference, became executive director, and kind of ripped the entire organization up from its roots and rebuilt it. And that's how I got my foot in the space industry.
Nice. So when you talk about building a program management software, how does that differ for an industry such as the space industry versus other industries that use software development to write code and build products?
Yeah, so we're actually not only for the space industry. We started in the space industry for sure, because that's where my background is, and one of my co-founders has background in the space industry as well, and so we knew the problems. But we're for all complex hardware, so we like to say program management software for the world's most ambitious machines. And the fundamental unique thing about hardware is that it is inherently collaborative. Software, you have a team of engineers internal to your organization. You might contract out, but it's not absolutely necessary. You generally hire the talent in. Then you run into a problem and you fix it internally. Hardware, you have so many external dependencies, whether it's contract manufacturers, people that can build this one specific part or have the talent to build these things in a machine shop that are incredible. You have companies that are the only ones in the world who have perfected the manufacturing technique for this one specific thing that might be necessary for a human-rated car or anything like this. So all of hardware is inherently externally collaborative. And you see software talk about, we're built for collaboration. We're collaboration first, all of this. And then you get to collaborating externally, and you get this kind of stutter putter out response, like, well, not that kind of collaboration, and so the fact that external and inter-organizational communication is so necessary and inherent to hardware builds is what makes it so different, and what makes Integrate different. We built it so that you can communicate as seamlessly with people external to your company as internally, and it's been really powerful for a number of customers.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I've seen too. Whenever you try to, building products. So I'm in the media industry, and one of the things that we hire contractors to do a lot of the editing and development, and a lot of the internal tools just don't. You get certain access that they can have, but not everybody. Then you have to get like permission to, some companies said, oh no, we have to create a whole another user account in our tenant for that user. They need to log out of this user account, log into this user account, and it becomes very complicated very quickly. So I totally understand that.
Yeah, that's exactly. I've seen that problem at just about every hardware company I've worked at. And once you have to log into 7 different instances of Java or 16 different instances of Smartsheet, it just kind of gets to a point where you're like, is this collaborative? Is this actually helping me? Yeah. So
tell me about what drove you to actually start Integrate. Like, what was the actual thing that made you say, yeah, we were going to do this, and we're going to step out and actually start this company?
Yeah. So I was at my 4th hardware company, interned at Spire Global very early on. I was very early employee at Astranis building micro geotelecommunication satellites, and then at Spaceflight right as they were getting their orbital transfer vehicle program off the ground, and then I was at ABL Space Systems, more on the business development side of things, but I had this unique perspective at all of these companies because I was on operations and supply chain and procurement and on business development. So we'd see all of these inflows come from external stakeholders and external companies, vendors, suppliers, contract manufacturers, all these things that you would have to communicate and then synthesize with your roadmap internal to your organization, all of your engineers internally, and then inevitably with hardware, there are outflows or things you need to collaborate with your customers on, whether it's timeline of delivery, whether it's requirements definition, things like this. So I saw that exact same story play out at every single company I was a part of, where we would get inflows via email or Excel or Smartsheet instances or Java instances and all these, and we would have to rip them all down, put them into our own software internally to be able to coordinate and think through and figure all of that out. And then we would inevitably want to communicate some of these exact same things to our customers directly. And so we would have to download it all back and throw it to them via email and all this, and then they would have to do the same thing. And it was like, this is like a industry-wide, worldwide efficiency breakdown in the truest sense. Like, this is crazy. I'm trying to hold back, but like really, really crazy. And how we think about it is dropping the baton every time you have to extract information, communicate it to somebody else, wait for them to pass it back, or you have a potential to drop the baton. It creates all of this spectacular risk. Well, anyway, I saw it at each of these companies internally. I would be a BD dude or procurement or supply chain, and I would receive and codify a statement of work in this contract in a PDF, and then I would pass it over to our mission managers or launch managers, and then they would have to extract everything from the PDF, put it into Excel sheet, upload it to Jira, upload it to Smartsheet, upload it to Java, then add their customers to each instance of that, and their customers would be overwhelmed with 3 different logins for a parallel instance of Jira, blah, 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 all these things. And I was like, this is insanity. So that was largely seeing that problem over and over and over again was what led to starting Integrate.
And when you started, what was that first? I imagine you built the product out iteratively, and you started out with like one set of features and then added onto it and added onto it. How did you determine and prioritize what those most important features would be first?
Yeah, a lot of intuition early on. We just had a company all hands, and we were just discussing what the most important feature, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but what the most important feature to us is and to our customers is, and it's this collaborative feature. And that was something that we built out on day one. Full stop. We built it because I had worked in so many of these companies where you had internal stakeholders and internal teams that would communicate with each other, and you were literally just updating data for other people on your internal team. So it was kind of a self-flicking ice cream cone. I remember staring up at the ceiling actually the day after I left, because I was going to take a month and just chill and think about things, and I didn't quite realize that I had this like burning solution that was necessary in my brain already. The day after I left ABL, I was staring at the ceiling, and I was like, the biggest part, if I build anything, it has to have accountability baked into the application. So we had to have this external-internal collaboration aspect, because if you're putting a data out in the world to one of your customers or 7 of your customers or something like this, you're going to be held accountable to that data, and you're going to make sure that, so that was what bore out the internal-external collaboration, and so much of what we've been building is just around that functionality. So there's some standard program management software things. We take a different approach because everything's on a roadmap and a product hierarchy. But listening to a lot of our early customers, but also knowing exactly what we needed for the first year and a half, it was okay. We just have to race to get these features out because I know they're going to be super powerful for people. And then a lot of feedback from customers to make sure that usability is top notch. And we have an incredible product team flat out that does a really spectacular job of prioritizing those features and voicing, where things are breaking down. Because I can obviously get myopic and I can get focused on a customer specific case and all these things. And they really yank me out of that. And they're like, no, we spoke about this because we had X, Y, and Z customer really have a hard time getting into it. So that's probably not the most exciting answer, but early on, definitely intuition, for better or for worse, but have to listen to our customers, and we are. I know everybody says they're customer obsessed, but I think we're even annoying to our customers and how customer obsessed we are.
Well, that's actually a very good thing, and sometimes it can be annoying when people are always asking. It's like, hey, the product works great. Don't bother me.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to like hardware, I guess there's a lot of specific challenges that are very different in hardware versus software. Specifically when it comes to updating and maintaining. You look at like software, you just put a patch out there that's really good to go. But when you have a failure when it comes to a piece of physical hardware, that becomes a lot more difficult to fix after the fact and late in the project. So I think accountability that you mentioned is extremely important. How is it that you or your product actually holds people accountable? Like how's that accountability come into play?
Yeah, it's a lot of behavioral, because I don't, I studied economics and incentives and behavioral change. And so a lot of it has to do with getting more people into the fold that have insight into the decisions that are being made or the timelines that have been put out there. It's a little bit scary because everybody in hardware knows, for better or for worse, there's an internal schedule and there's an external schedule. But if we have the opportunity to make that one schedule and make this game of what we call it in the space industry is launch chicken, where the satellite's being developed, the rocket's being developed, and you're like, oh yeah, no, we're going to be ready by that launch date. We're going to be ready by that launch date. Oh nope, we don't have any delays. When both of them are like 6 months, eight months out, blown out of the schedule. If we can just get people collaborative to think a little bit differently and actually own up to what schedules are semi-realistic with each other, I think that fundamental behavioral change will hold a lot more people accountable to the things they say they're going to do and want to do. And I think it'll open up a lot of trust, honestly. You put your schedule out there and you say, hey, this is what we're working toward mutually between all these different deep levels. And I think inherently giving people an understanding of what's over the horizon leads to a little bit more trust and inherently a little bit more collaboration, a little bit more accountability because of it.
Yeah. So how important would you say transparency is when it comes to, because it's what you're talking about when you talk about like, launch chicken, you have the different groups going, but they're not really being transparent about where they're actually at, where they're actually targeting.
Yep.
Wouldn't life be better if you just had that open transparency and collaboration?
We think so, and we're betting the company on it. At the same time, there are reasons that you want to, there might be a difficult customer that you're dealing with that is going to, flip the table and scream and yell and kick and all these things. If you're delayed by a day, I've dealt with it before, and it's just you kind of realize that they don't know how, they're new to this. So there's some cases, but I think the closer we can get to that transparency, the better off everybody will be. And I'm reading the book The Goal for the second time now, and for anybody that doesn't know, it's all about manufacturing, dealing with bottlenecks in large organizations and things like this. And I think this lack of transparency is a huge bottleneck and does not, just like with an internal team, if you just try to push people and squeeze people as hard as humanly possible, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes it works out, but it's not really a long-term sustainable strategy to just beat people down. And that's what I think a lot of people do with these schedule, internal versus external schedule things. Does that make sense? I feel like
Yeah, it does. And, when it comes about just to basic management and leadership, you can push people every now and then, to hit a date that's just really hard, but you can't constantly be in that mode of pushing because eventually they're going to wear out. They're going to break. They're going to burn down. They're going to quit and you're going to be stuck. So it's going to come back and bite you at some point. Every now and then, I think as long as you're a good leader and you're transparent about, hey, this is the one time where I've got to ask you, to, work late, to handle this thing, to get this, to help us meet this deadline. And normally I don't do this, as long as you're not, crying wolf every day. I think you can use that strategy every now and then, but when you use it all the time, your team's going to hate you and they're just going to leave.
It does. Yeah. It does raise an interesting question though, because I said a lot of that along those lines on a panel, and then somebody was like, well, what about SpaceX? And it was like, I don't have a good answer for that at all. And I mean, they're one of the most operationally efficient companies in the world, but not an easy job.
No. And I mean, what's their turnover rate?
It used to be very high,
So, I mean, and there's a cost to that, my first few years as, a software manager, my turnover rate was very high. We got a lot done, but, there was a cost to that. And, I one day I had 30% of my team quit. One day it was like, well, now I'm screwed. And I realized at that point I needed to make a change. And I found for long-term success, it's better to, strategically be a better leader, be a better manager, and let people realize that, give them a work-life balance and push them when you need to push them, but not all the time, When you started to grow your company, what was it like hiring people and sharing your mission and vision for the company and bringing them on board?
Yeah, one of my former bosses, I was like, I don't know. I think some people are turned off by how excited I am. It's like, then those people shouldn't work for the most excited guy. Like, you're just like one of the most excited constantly. Sometimes it comes off as intense and negative, and negative aspects and all these things. But are you asking for what we look for or what we?
What you look for. What was the process like for you as far as having to delegate and hire people and transition things and just the growing pains when it comes to building a company?
A lot of learning. I screwed up a lot in the beginning. I didn't understand exactly how software was built or worked and all these things, so I get pissed off when things broke unreasonably so, like flat out. And everything, I call it new baby syndrome. like, because everything feels new when you start a company for the first time. And I started a rec label back in the day, but it was completely different stakes and completely different, everything. And it was kind of new baby syndrome. I rode every high and every low, not realizing that they were just going to keep coming. Period. Like the highs and breaks and things were just going to keep coming. So got to be able to self-regulate a lot more. So it was painful. We lucked out in our early team and our current team, or it always feels like luck, at least, even though you put a lot of work into finding them. And I think, I was much more on that push at all costs, hard-headed, sort of mentality, and then have since learned to not ride the wave. My stress is not their stress and shouldn't be, and I should actively be a blocker for a lot of the shitty, frustrating things that happen in the market that are tough to deal with. And so it was a hell of a learning curve, flat out. And I've worked for founders my entire career, up until this point. And now it's a little bit of the, die the hero or live long enough to become the villain. But not, I love all my former bosses, truthfully. They've helped me a lot in this journey. But yeah, it's amazing to realize that there is this kind of circle of life to it where I've gone back and apologized to every founder that I worked for before, because now I realize that the things that I kicked and screamed about or complained about or anything wouldn't even make my top 75 list now, because of things that I'm worried about or scared about or anything like this. So a lot of learning. Did a lot of things to completely change how I approached life. Stopped drinking entirely, started working out twice a day, and all that's led to helping me be more present and calm for my company and the people in it. Yeah.
So I do want to talk about that a little bit, because I know for me, whenever I, changed and started working out, it's like the energy that I got really helped me focus at work a lot better than I thought that it would. And it was just an amazing thing that working your body makes your mind so much more focused. And but I want to get into that just a little bit. But one thing you said that really, you talked about how you had to be a blocker for your team. And how did you balance or learn about the things that you need to be transparent about and share versus the things that, like, that's just going to stress them out, they don't need to know, I'll handle that one myself and take care of that. How do you balance that? Because that's always been a tough thing for me to know, like, what I need to share with my team and what I need to, like, shield them from.
Yeah. We've outside of our seed raise, we've had a pretty good go of it, like a pretty solid go of it with great customers and a lot of steady progress. And everybody's pretty deeply connected to what's happening in the company. So there isn't a lot of, like, unrealistic tulips and daisies, just tripping through the flowers on any day. I think, when we got within a certain threshold of runway, when we were raising a seed round, there was a time where I was just like, okay, nobody needs to know this except for me. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, it's irresponsible for me to not tell them, because in the event that, they need to find something. So I think around runway, we're open when customers churn. We've had one or two people leave, and I think one of the worst things that ever happened, stories get created in silence, right? If people don't know what's going on, then they're going to fill the cracks with their own stories and their own narrative and all this. So one of the things that drove me crazy at previous companies was somebody would leave that was, like, super important to the company or that was there since the beginning, and nobody would say anything. It would just be like, they never existed, and it's just like I never understood that, and so it's hard, and I don't particularly love it, but facing these things full on and saying, hey, this is what happened, this is what we discussed, this is, has been really, really important, and probably something that I definitely didn't learn from prior roles. It's kind of what's best for you and what you think, the trajectory you're on. So I hate to say it depends, but it kind of depends.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think you're talking about like key stakeholders and people is really important. And, there's always a legality of what you can and can't share. But, I've worked at a company before where we had an executive vice president and a vice president both get let go and no one communicated it. So like even like the next morning, their admin didn't even realize that their boss wasn't here. And, just like, oh, I guess they're coming in late. I don't know, and, a couple hours later, it's like, no, they don't work here anymore. It's like, what? And then never sent a notification, communication, just like,
wow. Yeah.
Whatever.
That's
and I've been at other companies though, where we've had similar things happen and it's immediately like, hey, these people are no longer with us. Just so you know, it's not a financial decision. It was, something else. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Can't talk about it further, but we're not laying people off. We're not struggling right now. I don't want people to worry.
Yeah.
So it all depends on, like, I guess the company and their culture. Because sometimes, when you see like executives leave, whether it be by their own will or whatever, people get concerned financially. Like, is the company going to do well? We're going to, we're looking to get out. But staying ahead of that and communicating that, offers a sense of safety and security that I think people really can get behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope, at least.
So what's your strategy, your growth plans, and where do you see Integrate going in the next couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. We feel like we're just hitting the knee right now on the curve, that that hockey stick, which is great. We, much to the chagrin of literally everybody that's given us advice, we have pursued and I hate the term dual use, but I'm going to use it, a dual use path. So we've gone hardcore on DoD and hardcore in on commercial. And everybody's like, you can't do both, period. Like, why are you doing that? Stop doing that. You got to focus on one. And they refused because, I'm most excited guy, apparently. and that is, it's, I think Sam Altman said something about the earlier he put in heavy amounts of work that it has compounding effects, and we're finding that to be true. Absolutely huge fan of our government stakeholders, and it feels like they're a huge fan of us. And so, we're working really well with them, and hope to continue, serving U.S. Space Force and more. And then, we're starting to really see commercial traction pick up. We've got some really, really big names that have signed and are signing, this week and next. And so it's really feeling like some pretty spectacular momentum. But we want to be synonymous with hardware development and complex machines. If somebody says, are you on Integrate? I want it to be the like, am I a dumbass? Do I not know how to do my job? Of course I'm on Integrate. No response. And we want to get to that point. And I think we have a real good shot at it. I think we're going to see a lot of growth from, we have a lot of use cases and really spectacular use cases within DoD, and then, the real scalable aspect is on the commercial side. And so I think, hopefully we'll be able to get a few announcements out here soon that are showing that. Yeah.
Awesome. And you can tell just by talking to you, you have a real passion for this. I think as we're talking about being the most excited, it's definitely your passion is coming through for sure. And I think that is very, great for a leader. Leaders got to have passion about what they're doing. And if they're not, it really, kind of blows to their team. So I think having that energy helps you be like a light socket for everybody else around you and be able to share that with your team. So I think that's fantastic. John, it's been a great conversation. How can people connect with you online, learn more about what you guys are doing, and maybe if they're working at somewhere that creates, really complicated machinery, they're gonna get in touch with you about using Integrate.
Yeah, hit us up at integrate.co.co. You can fill out a form to say hi. You can schedule a meeting with us. You can go sign up for an account and poke around and play around with it. We are gluttons for punishment. By that I mean wildly into feedback in whatever form it comes in. So we're here for it. And then just hit us up through the website or follow us on LinkedIn. I put out product marketing videos that are very much on the side of one of our investors, Lucas, who's spectacular, says, if you're not embarrassing yourself every day, you might not be trying. So I'm doing that, putting those videos so you can see what the application looks like, and check us out on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'll link that too in the show notes at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through. And yeah, I agree with you. If you're not stretching yourself, you never know where your limits are. So keep pushing.
Yeah.
John, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. Make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.